Ok, muy buenos días a todos y todos. Un encanto poder saludarlos esta mañana. Un saludo a estudiantes, autoridades, profesores, investigadores y quienes más nos acompañan el día de hoy. Me alegro mucho poder dar la bienvenida a este lanzamiento del Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad. En primer lugar, la Universidad de Santiago de Chile cuenta con un plan estratégico e institucional 2020-2030 que plantea como uno de sus 5 pilares principales también un quinto eje que es de internacionalización e interculturalidad. Sumado a este plan estratégico, también existe una política de internacionalización que contempla lo que es el sello de internacionalización para la docencia, cuyo objetivo es la instalación, el fortalecimiento de competencias interculturales, lingüísticas y de análisis crítico y comparativo, para lograr lo que es la formación habilitante para desarrollarse en un mundo globalizado. Este centro nace a partir de este contexto y dentro del marco de este trabajo también de lo que se hace en el Departamento de Relaciones Internacionales, que es parte de la Vicerrectoría de Vinculación con el Medio. El Departamento de Relaciones Internacionales tiene como misión fortalecer, ampliar, profundizar las conexiones internacionales de la universidad y promover iniciativas para concretar la internacionalización en todas las áreas misionarias: la docencia, la investigación y la vinculación con el medio. Es por esto que el Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad nace a través del DRI y su política de internacionalización en pos de fortalecer y fomentar lo que son las instancias de formación de competencias lingüísticas, interculturales y análisis crítico y comparativo. Hoy en día, el conocimiento de otras lenguas y saber envolverse en ambientes multiculturales e interculturales es un elemento fundamental para la formación integral de toda nuestra comunidad universitaria, además de poder conocer y comprender los aspectos socioculturales asociados al manejo de un segundo idioma. Con esto en mente, el Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad promoverá oportunidades de aprendizaje locales e internacionales que ofrezcan perspectivas dinámicas en lenguaje e interculturalidad, que crearán un espacio para la comunidad universitaria para ser un espacio donde se celebra la diversidad y se proveen también los aprendizajes prácticos, reales, tangibles y accesibles para todos y todas. Es importante señalar también que este lanzamiento cuenta con la destacada participación de representantes de la Embajada de Estados Unidos, entidad que hace posible la creación de este centro, la Universidad de Rutgers, la Universidad de Wisconsin y obviamente la Universidad de Santiago. Finalmente, yo quiero cerrar esta pequeña introducción con algunas cosas prácticas. Hoy también contamos con la traducción simultánea, que es realizada por estudiantes de nuestra carrera de traducción de la Facultad de Humanidades. Hemos establecido un lazo importante con la Facultad de Humanidades dentro de este gran proyecto como socios estratégicos debido a su gran reconocimiento y trabajo en estas dos áreas. Les recordamos que abajo en su ventana de Zoom pueden buscar el canal del idioma deseado y también les recordamos que consideren que estos son estudiantes en práctica, si es que hubiera alguna demora en la traducción. Para nosotros es importante justamente poder poner a disposición de nuestros estudiantes espacios de práctica, de poner en la misma práctica sus conocimientos y tener la oportunidad de tener espacios libres de poder aplicar sus conocimientos, un elemento clave para este nuevo centro. En primer lugar, a continuación les dejo con un pequeño saludo a nuestro rector, del doctor Juan Manuel Solés Isit.
Así.
Muy buenas tardes. Junto con entregar un afectuoso saludo a cada uno de ustedes por su presencia, saludo muy especialmente a las autoridades invitadas a este significativo acto. Es un privilegio el estar presente hoy, cuando se inaugura el Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad, cuya importancia será trascendental para avanzar en el ámbito de la internacionalización e interculturalidad de la Universidad de Santiago de Chile, alineados con nuestro Plan Estratégico Institucional 2020-2030. El centro planea ser una plataforma que visibilice toda la oferta disponible de nuestro plantel en temas lingüísticos e interculturales y contará con alianzas estratégicas con otras universidades, como la ya conformada entre la Facultad de Humanidades y la Rutgers University de Estados Unidos. Inicialmente el centro desarrollará un programa piloto que permitirá que 40 estudiantes de la Universidad de Santiago de Chile mejoren su inglés mediante trabajos enfocados en temas interculturales para mejorar sus competencias lingüísticas. Paralelamente dispondrá de talleres en estas áreas, en formato extracurricular, para complementar la formación de las y los estudiantes. El lanzamiento del Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad tiene un significado especial en lo personal, porque era uno de los compromisos considerados en mi programa de gobierno para este periodo, como un factor primordial para el desarrollo de la formación integral de los estudiantes, asociado a la internacionalización de nuestro plantel. Como institución de educación superior que mira los desafíos futuros, nos llena de orgullo el ver concretado este proyecto de internacionalización y vinculación con otros, más aún cuando en este periodo de pandemia la experiencia nos enseñó que es imposible avanzar solos y que las alianzas son beneficiosas para todos. Se trata de un gran aporte al desarrollo de las actividades académicas de la Facultad de Humanidades y de la Universidad, y servirá como un espacio de vinculación a nivel nacional e internacional, abriendo el espacio a otras actividades culturales de divulgación de las competencias lingüísticas e interculturales. Estimados y estimadas asistentes, les reitero nuestra gratitud y consideración a la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Chile por este nuevo espacio cultural que apoyan y que expresa la vinculación, interés y excelencia que impulsamos en nuestra casa de estudios. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias al señor rector. Ahora pasamos a unas breves palabras de Paula Wickel, la agregada cultural de la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Chile. Bienvenida. You have to reactivate your microphone, please.
Lo siento.
Ahora sí, perfecto.
Sí, no, muchísimas gracias y muy buenas tardes a todas y todos. Como dijo Anouk, soy Paula Weichel, la agregada cultural aquí en la Embajada de los Estados Unidos en Santiago. En nombre de la Embajada, quiero agradecer mucho al señor rector, Dr. Juan Manuel Zolesi, a la vicerrectora de vinculación con el medio, Dr. Karina Arias, a la directora de Relaciones Internacionales, por supuesto, Anouk, y demás autoridades de la universidad, la invitación a participar en el lanzamiento del Centro de Lenguas y Interculturalidad de la Universidad de Santiago de Chile. Como embajada nos sentimos muy honrados de poder colaborar con la universidad para hacer realidad una iniciativa pionera que aborda prioridades compartidas como la diversidad, la inclusión y el idioma inglés y apoyar el desarrollo de las áreas STEM. Como saben, el Centro de Lenguas y Interculturalidad trabajará sobre la base de la experiencia y expertise del modelo de la Universidad de Rutgers, sirviendo como vehículo para expandir el acceso y dominio del idioma inglés y a oportunidades de estudio en los Estados Unidos, al mismo tiempo que aborda la diversidad e inclusión. Felicitamos a la Universidad de Santiago por ser parte de este proyecto innovador para seguir construyendo una comunidad universitaria fuerte y cohesionada, capaz de entender y responder a los desafíos actuales. Desde la Embajada de los Estados Unidos nos complace ser parte de esta alianza estratégica para seguir profundizando las relaciones entre Estados Unidos y Chile y esperamos que más estudiantes de la USACH postulen a programas en instituciones de educación superior en los Estados Unidos. Muchísimas gracias y otra vez felicidades en este esfuerzo. Gracias.
Muchas gracias, Paula. A continuación, vamos a dar unas breves palabras a Nela Navarro, del Relly Associate Director of Rutgers University. Déjame ver si es que está pudiendo vernos. Un segundo. Nela, ¿estás por ahí? Temo que entraste por el lado del público. Voy a volver a reenviarte al correo electrónico el enlace y sugiero que mientras tanto resolvemos eso, vamos a partir con la presentación de Molly Denen sobre el Centro de Lenguas, mientras resolvemos el acceso de Nela. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon from wherever you're joining us from.
Buenos días y buenas tardes
Ahora sí,
a todos.
Nela, ¿eres tú?
disculpa, escucho a Laura.
Ah, ok.
Y ahí apareció Nela.
Hola, hola. Disculpe, ¿me ven y me escuchan? ¿Sí?
Sí,
Sí.
perfecto. Muchas gracias. Hola, Nela, adelante.
Bien, ¿puedo tomar la palabra? Muy bien, muchas gracias. Pues seré muy breve. Es un enorme placer para mí estar acompañando a ustedes hoy en día con este lanzamiento tan importante, una colaboración que realmente para nosotros es algo de gran importancia, ya que forma parte de los mismos valores y la misma misión de nuestro centro y del trabajo que aportamos y que trabajamos en el Rutgers English Language Institute de la Facultad de Inglés. Y agradecemos esta posibilidad de empezar y lanzar otra etapa en nuestro trabajo en el centro y agradecidos estamos por esta oportunidad. Soy otra vez Nela Navarro, la directora asociada del Rutgers English Language Institute en la Facultad de Inglés de Rutgers University, la asociada directora de Nicole Hauser, que es una de las que va a presentar hoy y la persona que sigue en camino con ustedes en esta gran obra y trabajo. Les felicitamos mucho de parte de Rutgers University. Adelante y con mucho gusto seguiremos con ustedes. Hola a la hermosa país y la bella ciudad de Santiago, Chile. Gracias.
Muchísimas gracias, Nela. Ahora sí dejamos con Molly. Adelante.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone from wherever you're joining us from. It's an honor to be here with all of you this morning to celebrate this very special event. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us, for your interest and for your participation. My name is Molly Denon. I'm the acting manager of the Center of Languages and Interculturality at USACH. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to share with you just exactly what the center will be and what it will do. Before we begin, I'd like to invite you all to think about this quote from theoretical linguist Noam Chomsky. He said, "A language is not just words. It's a culture, a tradition, a unification of a community, a whole history that creates what a community is. It's all embodied in a language." In the early stages of this project, when it was merely just a blurry idea, our team came together to discuss ideas about what we wanted to be. And one of the ideas that came up quite often was the idea of a lack of practical instances for our students. As many of you may or may not know, all majors at our university require English as part of the core curriculum. But we realized that there was a lack of instances in which our students could practice their English outside of the classroom, or in which they could connect with English speakers from other parts of the world. Additionally, only 1% of the USACH community today is academically mobile. During the COVID pandemic, we saw a rise in virtual global learning opportunities, For example, with our partners here at Rutgers, many of our students from the Faculty of Engineering were able to participate in the language exchange program, which has been a tremendously positive experience, but we realized we need more of these experiences, and our students need to be prepared linguistically and interculturally when these opportunities arise. So for us, that means more exposure to cross-cultural and academic exchange opportunities, and more and better linguistic and intercultural preparation for our students to create a more mobile USACH student body. This brings us to the 4 pillars of action upon which our center stands. The center, in efforts to expose the community to more linguistic and intercultural opportunities, will start first by making visible those opportunities that already exist on our campus and that celebrate our local language and culture. The center will offer a diverse group of linguistic and intercultural programs to better prepare our students, our staff, and our faculty for the world in which they will perform in academically, socially, and professionally. And finally, the center will foster outreach and public engagement with local and global partners to collaborate and enrich the academic experience. Next, I'd like to share with you our vision. The Center for Languages and Interculturality envisions a USACH in which all members of the USACH community take part in the creation and construction of a multicultural and multilingual educational environment. In order to become this community, there's a long road ahead, but the center is dedicated to the creation, design, and implementation of programs and learning opportunities for the USACH community that promote cultural and linguistic diversity and inclusion at a local and international level. Our programs aim at giving students, faculty, and staff the necessary tools to successfully understand, adapt to, participate in, move between and among, and bridge changing linguistic and cultural environments. We design our programs using a methodology that encourages reflection, that is equitable, accessible, inclusive, and in context. The center commits to celebrate diversity, to value differing perspectives and opinions, to foster growth and discovery, to center discussion and collaboration, and to promote awareness. So what does that mean for the day ins and day outs of the work that we do? It means that as a center, we will provide practical, real life, tangible, and accessible learning opportunities to all in our community. It means we will enhance the professional, social, and academic profile of students through diverse activities. It means we will create programs that engage the campus community on cultural issues that raise awareness of these issues and advocate for and celebrate diversity. It means we will create platforms that make the work of the diverse linguistic and cultural groups of our university visible. And it means we will promote the extension of linguistic and cultural networks within and outside the university. Finally, I'd like to mention some of the activities that are already underway in the center. Today, as all of you here are participating, marks the official launch of our center. But on Wednesday of this week, Dr. Hauser and I had the pleasure of inaugurating our first course, English Across Cultures. This course is a course designed for 40 STEM students, all with intentions of studying abroad. It uses English as a medium of instruction to discuss questions surrounding identity, culture, and communication. This course will be continued surrounding similar topics, but in a more intensive academic writing scenario next semester. And after both semesters, 8 students will be selected to participate in a 2-week academic exchange in the United States next year. This launch also marks the initiation of our US-Chile talks, a series of 15 a series of 15 webinars about the Sustainable Development Goals, in which an USACH expert, accompanied by an American expert in their respective fields, will lead us in discussion and conversation about the linguistic and cultural nuances surrounding the SDGs. Our first series will begin in October, and it will be led about climate action, led by USACH's Dr. René Garrido. Begun before the center, but continuing now as part of the center's strategic plan and efforts, are the intercultural and English conversation workshops, in which students exchange ideas, language, in order to develop critical thinking, global awareness, and intercultural competencies. Also underway is a program titled Global Campus, in which 80 academics and administrative staff from the university are participating in virtual English classes to prepare them for the internationalization of our campus. Lastly, we are working on, in collaboration with Rutgers University and the Faculty of Humanities, on the development of a diagnostic tool that will launch next March. This tool will be used university-wide for all students to be able to certify their level of English so that they're able to study abroad. It will also be used for students who are looking for guidance to receive English courses and linguistic preparation to be able to study and work in English-speaking countries. We invite all of you to stay in touch and keep a close eye on our center, for today is merely just the beginning of a long journey that I hope to continue, and invite all of you here to continue with us. I hope that this journey brings us all closer together to understand, to appreciate, and to celebrate each other as an USACH community. Thank you. And next, to celebrate this special inauguration, we've organized a panel discussion. We've invited two of our partners, Dr. Nicole Hauser and Dr. Nestor Singer, and a special guest, Dr. Armando Muyulema, to speak about the intersection of language and interculturality and the role of our center. Dr. Nicole Hauser is the director of Rutgers English Language Institute within the English department's writing program. The Rutgers English Language Institute houses all divisions dedicated to scholars who use English as an additional language. Dr. Hauser specializes in applying critical and contextualized approaches to curricular development. She has written and taught courses for all levels of learners of English and Spanish, as well as an introduction to linguistics, sociolinguistics, translation, intercultural communication, and special topics courses on language ideologies and linguistic discrimination in the United States. Dr. Nestor Singer is the head of the Department of Linguistics and Literature at the University of Santiago de Chile. He is a PhD candidate in Translation and Intercultural Studies at the University of Manchester. He holds a master's in TESOL from the same university and a Bachelor of Arts in Translation Studies from USACH. He has been teaching English for over 15 years and has focused on language learning and teaching in translation education. His research interests include translator education, translator identity, translation pedagogy, and second language teaching and translation programs. And finally, Dr. Armando Muyulema is an educator and activist for the rights of indigenous peoples and a native of Southern Andean Ecuador. He has completed undergraduate studies in education, Andean linguistics, and cultural anthropology. He earned a master's degree in cultural studies at the Universidad Andina Simón Bolívar in Quito, Ecuador, and then went on to pursue doctoral studies at the University of Pittsburgh. He has taught at several universities in Ecuador and Latin America, and he currently teaches at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. His studies focus on the intersection of critical sociolinguistics, education, and Andean epistemologies, and on cultural production and indigenous popular movements in Latin America. I'd like to give a warm welcome to all of our panelists. Thank you all of you for being here and for celebrating with us this morning. If you could all turn on your cameras and your microphones, I'll ask you the first question. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you very much for having us, Molly.
It's our pleasure. So I read the mission of our center to our audience, and keeping our mission in mind, I'd first like to ask Dr. Hauser. Dr. Hauser, how does the mission of our center relate to your particular line of work? And what value do you think a center like this could provide to your area of language and cultural programming?
Thank you, Molly, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I answer that question, I just wanted to thank all of our partners and collaborators at the University of Santiago de Chile and the U.S. Embassy for supporting this project. And so at Rutgers English Language Institute, RELI, we are also a newly established language center. We are beginning our third year. And our mission, we were founded on a mission of developing a global, translingual, transcultural curriculum reflective of and building upon the ways in which we communicate across cultures and disciplines in academic and professional spaces. We also, another central role and mission to RELI is to recognize and celebrate our global community at Rutgers in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and to strengthen our global partnerships and collaborations such as this. So the goals and the mission of the Center for Languages and Interculturality are parallel and are reflective of our mission and our goals at RELI as a new center. And as Molly had mentioned in the introduction, RELI, the foundation of our curriculum, and we just completed a full course redesign for our writing-focused programs within the writing program in the English department at Rutgers. We seek to, at the foundation of our curriculum, reflect upon and study the relationship between language, culture, and communication. And then also to explore and expand upon that, the relationship of those elements within the disciplines and within an academic context. So many times, and this is particular to the context of the United States, there is still this tradition of separating out language and cultural focused courses. It is true, yes, that is a field of study in which we are all involved in this project on this call. However, this tends to lead to an overly focused and separation and framing of intercultural and global themes as separate from disciplinary work. In the US, this is particularly salient in graduate programs, but it also occurs in undergraduate courses as well. And so programs and centers such as RELI and the Center for Languages and Cultural and Interculturality provide this opportunity to work across levels, across languages, across disciplines to interconnect and create this awareness of the interconnectedness of language, culture, context within the disciplines. And also, furthermore, and I want to stress this is within the US context as well, something that that occurs because of the ubiquitous nature of and dominance of the English language, especially within academic context, is the over-focus on English in this sense narrows our perspectives and our interpretations of our world across and analysis of our world and our subjects across disciplines. So it opens these focuses to a multiple linguistic and cultural perspective in order to further develop and innovate our disciplines and our ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Hauser. I'd like to invite Dr. Singer or Dr. Muyulema to address the same question.
Shall I go first?
Excellent.
All right. Well, first, Molly, I'd like to thank you and Anak for inviting me to this event and for inviting our department to be part of this significant milestone in the internationalization of our university. We are more than thrilled to participate in the design of the institutional English language diagnostic test. For the department, it is a privilege to be part of that, and we will put our hearts and souls into it. I'm very happy to see that the mission of the center matches and aligns with the mission of our department, particularly in the role that we play in promoting a socio-cultural transformation. Our department currently offers one BA in Spanish language teaching, a BA in English language teaching, and also a BA in translation studies. So in a way, the professionals that work with, we train professionals that work with languages and the cultures that underlie those languages. So in that way, our programs equip them with the skills to experience the world through the lens of other cultures. And this allows our graduates to redefine themselves, I think, as individuals. And in turn, they will inspire others in the construction of their own self as they explore and engage with languages. So in that way, learning a language here at the university is not a mere commitment to who you are now, but potentially who you can be, and being part of a global conversation that pushes you to redefine yourself in terms of your values and goals. And in that sense, the center could support our students during such a journey. And so far, the Department of International Relations has played a key role in promoting our students' exchange opportunities, and thus allows them to exchange the language they are learning firsthand. So I see that there will be substantial and very important future contributions between the Department of Linguistics and Literature and the Center. And please do consider us in any further endeavors that you have in the future.
Thank you, Dr. Singer. Dr. Muyulema, would you like to address this question?
Yes, I have some ideas. Thank you very much again for inviting to this great event. And I would like to speak and locate myself in the middle place, right? So it is my second language, Spanish. Yeah, okay, so muchas gracias por la invitación a este evento inaugural del Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad. Les cuento que ahora mismo en Ecuador, la Universidad Central, la más antigua y la más grande de Ecuador, acaba de establecer como requisito de carreras el aprendizaje del quechua. Sin duda, este es un paso audaz y valiente que deja atrás el voluntarismo y la opcionalidad respecto de esta lengua. Celebro estos dos eventos, la creación de este centro y pues la obligatoriedad del quichua, que da mucha esperanza en el futuro de las lenguas y las culturas en los albores del Decenio Internacional de las Lenguas Indígenas. Bueno, pues voy a llevar el agua a mi molino, pues porque, bueno, mi trabajo pues ha sido con lenguas indígenas, especialmente con el quichua, que es mi lengua materna. Y bueno, las preguntas, los pensamientos que yo tengo sobre el centro tienen que ver con el lugar que van a tener las lenguas minorizadas en Chile. Pienso en el mapuzungun y cosas así, ¿no es cierto? Bueno, entonces mi campo de interés pues amplio es la educación y la interculturalidad. Y en relación con la educación, mis líneas de investigación se enfocan en la sociolingüística crítica, el bilingüismo, el multilingüismo, la pedagogía de las lenguas minorizadas, pues que es un trabajo diario aquí en la universidad, y las políticas del conocimiento tal como estas se plasman en la currícula. Entonces la misión del Centro de Lenguas e Interculturalidad, pues que estamos inaugurando ahora, celebra la diversidad lingüística, pues, y eso me permite imaginar en trabajos profundos de investigación, documentación y promoción de la diversidad lingüística local e internacional. Y bueno, como dicen los mayores en mi comunidad, mientras más profundas son las raíces de un árbol, sus ramas pueden tocar al cielo. Pienso en la promoción, enseñanza, aprendizaje de las lenguas minorizadas de Chile, pienso en el mapuzungún y otras lenguas, y la celebración de la diversidad desde lo local a lo global es pensar la interculturalidad y las políticas lingüísticas en escalas diferentes, en escala desde lo local a lo global, desde la raíz hasta el cielo, pues que pensemos que pues la conexión con el mundo, la puerta al mundo, pues es el inglés. Y bueno, pues es el cielo de mis mayores. Mi expectativa académica es entonces aprender de las acciones de este centro, ¿no? Pues aprender metodologías que desarrollen, pues, metodologías de documentación y lo que puedan pues hacer para esta conexión con lo global, pero también fortaleciendo las raíces lingüísticas locales, pues entendiendo que la interculturalidad, pues ese es un puente, como bien dicen ustedes en la misión, es un puente que se construye de dos lados. Ya, es un puente que no implica pues un viaje de lo indígena a lo universal, sino pues un puente que se construye de ambos lados y pues el tránsito por ese puente es un flujo bilateral o multilateral, incluso podría decir, porque pues hay varias perspectivas que se juegan ahí. Pues eso, muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, doctor. Dr. Singer, I'd like to direct my second question firstly to you. As we've established after our first question, language and culture is in absolutely everything that we do, not only related to the formal study of language and culture. What value do you think a center or an initiative such as this can provide to the student experience across disciplines, understanding that in your faculty, in your department, students are studying language and culture per se, but how do you think this initiative can support a student experience in your department, but also those studying STEM, those studying technology, architecture, across disciplines, across the university?
Thank you, Molly, for your question. Well, it's basically just by looking at the comments in the chat, you will see that it has a tremendous and substantial value, not just for the department, but for the rest of the university. First, I believe that it would allow our students to conceptualize their disciplines from other languages and access the materials and the discussions in the source language. And I strongly believe that first-hand access to the knowledge enriches the learning experience considerably. And it also, as Dr. Hauser mentioned in her first intervention, it sets the ground for innovation. So if we are committed to innovate as a university, this is a critical step that we need to take to, make the move. I would also think that the center could promote student exchange, which is what has been a substantial part of what you have been doing as, not just as a center, but as the Department of International Relations. This makes the language experience tangible, and it makes it meaningful, purposeful. And that experience of the second language culture is life-changing. It's absolutely life-changing, which I think is at the very core of what USACH wants when we claim that we transform people, don't we? I think that that's a vital point, and the center plays a key role in that. And I would also think that the center could promote the application to scholarship programs. That could also be a very interesting goal. To do this, the center could help students prepare for international exams, which I think aligns with the design of the diagnostic text that we're working on. Good scores could potentially boost the chances of obtaining scholarships and then pursue postgraduate studies abroad. And undoubtedly, all this could lead and enhance the professional prospects of students and contribute to the social cultural transformation that we as a department promote, but that we also promote as a university, don't we? I would say that it goes along those lines.
Wonderful. That was a very motivating answer, Dr. Singer. Thank you. I'd like to ask Dr. Hauser or Dr. Muyulema, who are outside of USACH and might have a very different perspective on this question, if they'd like to shed light.
Well, thank you, Molly. I'd like to add to that as well. And as I had mentioned earlier, there has been this historic traditional division, especially in the fields of STEM, in the sciences of, studying culture and language. And in the context of the United States, so to add to that, every academic institution for decades now has a central mission of, and we have the key terms, diversity and inclusion. And without critical linguistic and cultural awareness and programming throughout and across the curriculum and across the disciplines, achieving this is not possible. Sustained inquiry, critical inquiry into these issues, into culture, into language, a focus and inclusion of linguistic variety, multiple languages, as we all have mentioned thus far, is imperative, is vital in order to make any of these statements and missions of diversity and inclusion actionable. And that is why we have created this foundation with hopes to expand, especially in RELI in our context in our institution, across the disciplines to create linguistically diverse curricula and programming in upper division graduate courses across programming, toward this mission and this goal.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Muyulema, would you care to add anything?
Yes. Se ha demostrado pues que las lenguas no son solo mecanismos de comunicación. Las lenguas guardan memorias culturales, guardan conocimientos, tienen una dimensión epistemológica en la medida en que representan y codifican de una manera diferente la realidad, establecen conexiones diferentes entre los objetos, las formas de representación y pues estableciendo una racionalidad distinta pues en las maneras como las sociedades organizan el mundo. En ese sentido pues las lenguas son posibilidades de entender el mundo, de entender otras formas de organización social, otras formas de relación con los entornos, con la naturaleza, con la diversidad cultural y biológica pues, que acaba de decir Nicole. Y en ese sentido, pues abre los horizontes de los estudiantes, pues, y permite entender que no solo uno se comunica con una lengua, sino pues también habla de posibilidades de entender mundos diferentes. Y yo mismo estoy trabajando esto en los Andes ahora pues con el quechua y el aymara, y podría contar muchas cosas sobre cómo se representan pues categorías como lo que sería la sociedad, lo que sería la solidaridad, etcétera, y las formas institucionales que ha adquirido en las sociedades andinas, pues que en este momento está como siendo desestructurada precisamente por falta de iniciativas de iniciativas de políticas lingüísticas que recuperen las lenguas pues que están en las bases de nuestros países.
Thank you, Dr. Muyulema. Actually, my third and final question is directed firstly to you, Dr. Muyulema. In your first response, you mentioned the idea of a bridge, of bridging the universal to the indigenous and the indigenous to the universal, and the multiple ways in which we can create this bridge. That leads me to the question, how can an initiative like this have an impact and do more to create a more just and a more multilingual and multicultural university community?
Bueno, mi expectativa, mi esperanza sobre el centro es que posiblemente pues hay un tránsito de la tolerancia a la diversidad lingüística, pues a un momento de empatía, no solo de interés académico, sino de empatía de otras lenguas, ¿no? Otras lenguas pues con los que los estudiantes pueden entrar en contacto, pues y esas son las lenguas locales y las lenguas globales como el inglés. Y respecto a las lenguas locales, pues pienso que ayuda, pues, o mejor dicho, el aprendizaje de otras lenguas ayuda a la relativización del suelo propio, porque la lengua es como la casa de uno, lo que da seguridad, da certeza, pero cuando avanzamos más allá de ese suelo propio, pues uno aprende a escuchar, a aprender y sobre todo a convivir. Y yo pues tengo esa expectativa, pues como un impacto, digamos, del centro. Ya dije, pues las lenguas no son solo herramientas de comunicación, son memoria cultural, son conocimiento del mundo, formas de organizar el mundo, son relaciones conceptuales, semánticas y de sentido. En ese sentido, pues la interculturalidad, pues es mi expectativa, que pues, no sea solo otra forma de describir la asimilación cultural como históricamente ha sucedido con el mestizaje y otras categorías, sino pues que represente, que articule ese tráfico intenso a través de fronteras lingüísticas y culturales, porque pues las fronteras no son líneas, sino más bien pues zonas de tráfico donde pues la gente se relaciona pues lingüísticamente, culturalmente, económicamente, etc. Y bueno, pues y eso incluye también el flujo de afectos, de creencias, de prácticas, de comportamientos. Entonces, pues pienso en que el centro pues va a convertirse en ese espacio que permite construir puentes juntos, generar iniciativas, propiciar la participación de hablantes de lenguas minorizadas, proponer proyectos, programas pues, de aprendizaje de lenguas minorizadas, de manera pues que el inglés, que será la apertura al mundo, pues sea una lengua aditiva y no sustractiva, que no implique el desplazamiento de las lenguas locales, pues dentro de las expectativas pues que existe a nivel global ahora mismo, pues con el decenio de los pueblos indígenas. Bueno, entonces no pienso pues que el centro va a ser un aparato de extractivismo simbólico o fortalecer pues esos discursos de globalización, pero con olvido de las raíces culturales que son pues el fundamento de la sociedad, de la nación, podríamos decir, ¿no? Bueno, eso y bueno, pues las expectativas son muchas, ¿no? Pues a mí personalmente me gustaría aprender de lo que ustedes hagan, pues estaré pendiente como activista, como académico, como hablante de una lengua nativa, pues saber qué podemos tomar de ustedes para fortalecer nuestros procesos.
Muchas gracias, doctor. Dr. Singer, Dr. Hauser, is there anything you'd like to add to this final question?
Dr. Hauser, would you mind if I go first? All right. Well, it was such an inspiring message, Armando. I think that was very revealing, and it's very hard to complement that somehow. It's very complete, holistic in its own. I would just like to add that the access to language courses that the center can provide can set the ground for that sort of understanding and that communication that Armando has mentioned. It would allow the possibility to, as I said, redefine students' subjectivity by being exposed to other cultures, other languages, and understand who they are. And not just who they are and how they're positioned in the world, but also how other people are positioned. And therefore, the course can promote not just the language skills that you need for practical purpose, such as applying for scholarship, whatever, but it promotes tolerance, understanding, communication. So in a nutshell, I think that the center will play a critical role in catering for students' diversity, not only in terms of the learning skills, which is, of course, very important, but also in terms of the identities, who they are. And by knowing who you are, you can also know who others are, and, you know, create society that way.
Thank you, Dr. Singer. Dr. Hauser, I leave the final comments to you regarding this question.
Great, thank you. Yes, and to just briefly build and to round out this discussion, I think, you know, and what we've encompassing what we have all discussed, it is, you know, centering for our broader academic goals, and in all of our words, actions, courses, programming, recognizing, celebrating, and most importantly, centering the linguistic and cultural diversity of our communities in all of our contexts. And truly, you know, in RELI, we talk about disposition, right? And we were talking about other aspects such as empathy, right? Interconnectedness, I'm seeing this in the chat, right? And creating a truly translingual, transcultural disposition among our community. And as I had mentioned, you know, creating programming that centers this diversity throughout coursework, throughout interactions, you know, at the smallest level to our largest institutional strategic plans and programmings, where we are actually framing our academic goals and plans from that perspective of translinguality. And so that is key, a key aspect to programs like this, and also centering, again, exchange programs and collaborations, like the one we are celebrating today for the Center of Languages and Interculturality, and this collaboration between RELI and USACH.
Amazing, thank you. We still have a few moments, so if it's all right with our panelists, I'd like to take one or two questions from our audience. They've sent in some fantastic questions that I think will complement very nicely with what you've already mentioned, and also take us to maybe a different place in this discussion. I'll read the question and then allow whoever's feeling most inspired to answer. This question comes in Spanish, and it says, respecto a la relación del idioma-cultura, ¿consideran relevantes los procesos de sincretismo cultural para el cambio del idioma?
I would say something now. Pues sí, de hecho, pues hay mucho sincretismo en la lengua, ¿no? Hay préstamos, bueno, pues sucede pues en todas las lenguas, pero pues hablando de lenguas minorizadas, pues que ha sido mi foco aquí, pues es, pues cuando hablamos de préstamos lingüísticos, por ejemplo, pues estamos hablando de no solo pues del préstamo de palabras, sino también de sentidos, y de sentidos que siempre son transformados. Pues hay, también pues sucede préstamos de lenguas minorizadas hacia la lengua dominante, como en este caso el español, y en el Ecuador, pues por lo menos, o en los Andes, pues hay muchísimos términos en español que son como que son híbridos semánticamente, ¿no? que han adquirido otros significados aparte de lo que tiene el español. Entonces, pues eso no solo que es posible, sino que se ha dado históricamente pues por el mismo contacto que existe pues entre las lenguas, y eso es, digamos, una parte esperable, natural del proceso de contactos lingüísticos, ¿no?
Can I add to what Armando was saying, Molly?
Please, please.
Well, basically, you know, cultural syncretism I would say it's part of the evolution of language in itself, because it's cultures that work together and engage together, and then language changes. And as Armando said, this has been something has historically occurred throughout the ages. If we don't just look at our own Spanish, just for instance, now when we finish work, well, before the pandemic, that is, many people would go to the happy hour. They would go and they say happy hour, and many pubs around the city center would have special sales at that time for people to go there, and they would just call it happy hour. They wouldn't say like hora feliz or something similar. So it became some sort of cultural practice with a foreign label on it, and it's interesting how that actually took place, because you won't refer it otherwise. And there is another very interesting, though not very, it's a very interesting cultural concept of ours, and it's always been challenging to translate and to explain to foreigners when they visit our country, which is café con piernas. So try to explain that concept, how it works, the boundaries that exist within the concept, because it's not purely sexual. It is sexual, but to which extent it is sexual, and how do you explain it in another language? So it is. But going back to the question, I digress. I tend to digress. It's part of my own identity and multiculturality as an individual. But I think that it has occurred systematically throughout the ages and will continue to happen. We are prone to it. The danger of that happening is what Armando has described. The problem that instead of merging with one another, one tends to push the other out within this negotiation, and that is something that we need to really, pay attention to within the process. Otherwise, you have languages that are absolutely excluded from this global conversation. Here we have exploring a center which tends to promote tolerance, etc. But you have that within these processes, some languages are discarded, and the idea is not to discard them, but to include them, making them part. And to that, probably all the changes need to be, done.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Singer, you briefly mentioned the pandemic, and I'd like to take that brief mention and ask a question from the audience that asked, how has the pandemic affected the level of interculturality in Chile? But I'd like to also open the question to include the United States and Ecuador. Let's start with Dr. Hauser, since you didn't answer in the previous question.
Sure, great, thank you. And I think that your question, Molly, the comments from my other panelists and also the questions of the chat really speak to the need and the importance of language programming centered on a critical contextualization of language, right? Rather than language as this thing out there we study, language as it relates to communities, to our human experience, to people situated in diverse and complex socio-political historical contexts. And I think that, so to bring it back to your question, Molly, our situation, the pandemic this past year and a half really has brought this front and center, these issues front and center. If you were ignoring the humanity of any of our fields of study up until that point, it was very abruptly brought to your attention in all of your programming or the extent to which you engaged in this work, because it could not be, and this is out, of course, I'm in the US context in a particular, region of the US. So I'm not, to generalize, but from our experiences, these issues, this could not be sort of put to the side or as something extra. And I think that this was an immense and has been an immense opportunity to really continue and build upon programming and courses and curriculum that had begun, this integration and this critical contextualization.
Dr. Muyulema or Dr. Singer, would you like to comment on the situations in your your local universities?
Yeah, I would like to add to what Dr. Hasse has said, that the pandemic, in a way, has been a challenge, and this has been trying times for everyone, undoubtedly. But I like to take what she said about this being an opportunity to think, reflect on what we're doing and what we have done so far. So we can change and reposition how we conceive language. And I absolutely agree with her when she says that language learning and teaching, although being quite holistic and student-centered in a way, has always been seen as this sort of tangible, practical toolkit that someone needs to achieve something. You know, there have been discussions about intrinsic motivation, external motivation, and so on. But the thing is, it lacks, you know, the practicality, it lacks the connection to who we are as human beings and what we need. And the pandemic, this tremendous earthquake, so to speak, has shaken us to the core and made us reflect on what we really need, what we want language for. Of course, this has opened, you know, business opportunities. Translators and interpreters are actually, you know, in demand now. Against all odds and possibilities, well, there are loads of opportunities. And the important thing is to, from the curricula point, to understand the needs that we have now are not the needs that we had before the pandemic. We have changed in a way. And it's important that all programs cater for that change. And the center in that way, the center that you're leading will play a vital point in that, since you will be part of being the gate, the door to all the programs within the university. As we, as a Department of Linguistics and Literature, of course, do that at a minor scale within our own students, and we provide English language courses to other students. But that's a very important takeaway from this conversation that we're having, to reconceptualize language teaching and learning within what matters to us all after this pandemic.
Amazing. Thank you, Dr. Singer. Dr. Moyulema, to finish up, is there anything you'd like to add?
Sí, bueno, como dice Néstor, pues la pandemia fue sí, un terremoto en el ámbito de la comunicación, pues que fue un elemento clave en el momento de la pandemia. Y en Ecuador, pues la comunicación fue un gran desafío, sobre todo pues con comunidades hablantes de lenguas diferentes al español. Había que traducir, pues, o sea, pues no era solo una cuestión de armar spots, avisos, sino también el desafío de la traducción, cómo traducir todo el lenguaje relacionado con el virus en sí mismo, pues, y los cuidados que hay que tener, y todo eso, pues, en términos culturalmente comprensibles no solo para una comunidad, pues nosotros tenemos como 13 comunidades lingüísticas diferentes. Unas, pues, con mayor experiencia, pues, en traducción por la cantidad de diccionarios, de materiales que ya existe, como el quechua o el shuar, y otras lenguas, pues, que son casi completamente orales, no hay poco material. Ahora, ¿cómo llegamos a esas comunidades para comunicar, pues, los riesgos de la pandemia? Entonces, pues, esto fue un reto, pues, para las agencias del Estado, para las universidades y también para distintas organizaciones de la sociedad civil, pues, que se involucraron en este proceso, los profesores que estaban trabajando con las comunidades, con los niños, con los jóvenes, etcétera. Entonces, pues, sí, yo creo que, pues, esto obligó a pensar de una manera distinta, pues, la relación con estas comunidades, pues, y fortaleció de alguna manera la voluntad política de generar políticas lingüísticas más concretas y más prácticas, como aquella que acaba de decidir la Universidad Central que les conté hace un rato.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Doctor. So I think we've just about run out of time. I'd like to thank our three panelists. This has been an incredibly enriching conversation. I think, speaking from the center, we have quite a lot of work to do to meet your expectations. But it's been inspiring to hear your perspectives, and I thank you very much for sharing with us today. I leave the final words with Anouk. Thank you, everyone.
Muchísimas gracias a Molia, doctor Singer, doctor Hauser, doctor Amuyela también. Yo creo que, bueno, viendo los comentarios, la interacción que hemos tenido el día de hoy, ha sido bien interesante poder conocer las iniciativas de distintas partes del planeta, es decir, en estos distintos países que estuvieron presentes el día de hoy dentro de esta actividad. También quiero reiterar el agradecimiento, obviamente, a la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Chile, presente el día de hoy, que nos apoya con este centro importantemente, tanto como a la Facultad de Humanidades, particularmente en la universidad, que ha sido un gran apoyo para nosotros en este proceso inicial. Como bien decía Molly, es importante recordar que estamos apenas al inicio de este gran proyecto y que queda mucho camino por recorrer. Por ende, agradecemos mucho todas las colaboraciones propuestas y ideas que pueden traernos para también poder seguir fortaleciendo este proyecto en el camino que nos queda. Así que agradezco mucho, yo les deseo, al menos los que están en horario chileno, un muy buen provecho para sus almuerzos, y para los que les queda alguna mañana, un muy fructífero día viernes y un muy feliz fin de semana para los que se quedan. Muchas gracias y estaremos en contacto prontamente.